Are you tired of walking on eggshells in your intimate relationship? Have
Mm,
you ever wondered why some couples just seem to have a connection that you don't have
mm,
in your partnership?
yes.
Well, the reason that you don't have that is because you don't have 3D communication. Most of the time, when we're communicating in intimate relationships and we have a challenge, we are communicating at the surface level. So that means we don't have understanding. We misunderstand. We are not talking to begin with. We avoid certain conversations. And we just have a low level of fulfillment when it comes to connecting with a person that we actually really love. The secret to having the amazing connection that leads to great intimacy, a great sex life, and an amazing power couple love legacy is to be able to have 3D communication. And
Mm,
for us, the 3Ds stand for deep. That means that your communication has to have some level of depth beyond how are you? And
the
I'm hoping
surface
that
level.
we can talk about this with a very weak bait of a conversation
Right.
hook for you. We have to be able to talk about all of the things that we think about, all the things that we care about, all the things we're worried about. And that takes some measure of depth personally, but then it takes the courage to share the depth with another person.
Yeah, got to penetrate deep.
Yes.
Got to. Got to.
The second D stands for dynamic. So in 3D communication, you have to be very dynamic, of
Mm-hmm.
course. When we're communicating, it's actually an amazing thing. It's one of my favorite things to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
communication and
Mm-hmm.
words, because what you're doing is making some idea that exists only inside your mind or your heart that's very abstract. You're making it concrete for another person.
Right.
If you don't do that in a dynamic way, the potency of what you feel and what you're thinking never quite gets to the other person. And this is how we often have misunderstandings and miscommunications. A lot of times when people come to us in our 20 years of doing counseling, people say, well, I said this before. Or, I tried to talk about this and the person just doesn't respond. We have to take responsibility and say, I'm not being dynamic enough. And dynamic doesn't mean loud, it
It
doesn't
doesn't
mean
mean big
chaotic,
words.
it doesn't mean some of the things that we translate dynamic to be in other spheres of our life. Dynamic essentially means I can make this thing that I feel and I think come to life. For another person, it actually comes to life for them too. They don't have to agree.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to want to do what I'm talking about, but they at least actually understand, which is what creates connection and depth in that we understand each other even though we're different. The third D in 3D communication is deliberate. And this one is
Mm,
extremely important because a lot of
intention.
times we are saying things, but it's nothing that is really measurable and it's nothing that is deliberate.
Right.
So for us, there are a couple of things that people say that are very vague when they come into counseling paradigms. One of them is, I just want someone to be more supportive, right? So
Oh,
that
that's a
kind
that's
of
the main one.
comment,
Yeah.
a couple of things
Means nothing.
are
it
not
means it means
deliberate.
everything.
One is if you catch yourself saying just, right? Like I just did. When I say I just want someone, but it's a pain point, it's a stressor, it's something I've been dealing with for a year, 5 years, 10 years, just is a minimizer in conversation. It's a simplifier in conversation. If you say, I just want a person to be a little more supportive, that doesn't mean anything to a person because typically they'll say, I just supported you this morning, yesterday, last night, right?
I just did it.
And then again, you have a misunderstanding. So this is why you need 3D communication to be able to express what you actually feel,
Mm,
to make it come to life for the other person, and to be
right.
deliberate by what you mean. What do you mean by supportive? Specifically, if it was coming to life, what does it look like, sound like, taste like, smell like, right? Feel like for you to have support at the level that you want, a perfect level 10. And then we have to also say to ourselves, how can I measure that thing? That means that I'll be able to have deliberate communication. So we teach how to have 3D communication in Acoma Soul. If you've ever had a misunderstanding, felt the conversation was not of any depth, or felt lost in what you wanted to do at the end of the conversation, or what the person who's talking to you expected from you, then you're missing one of those parts. And you could have felt all three things in a conversation, then you're
You probably
missing
do.
all three parts of 3D communication.
Right.
And most of us are because we're only taught the language that we speak. We're not actually taught how to communicate intimately.
Right.
The best instruction we get in how to communicate is for business,
Right.
and for work, right? We get scripts. We get exactly how to get the directive across of making more sales or closing more deals or creating whatever project we're creating. But that's not what we're doing when we're intimately communicating. So because the goal is different, you can't approach intimate communication the same way that you approach any other kind of communication.
Yeah, we work with leaders, blacks in leadership, and these are people who are successful in other spheres of their life, but they're struggling in the love area to create a happy, healthy, and harmonious relationship. They falsely believe that they can translate their political prowess, their professional prowess, whether they're a doctor or a lawyer, or they're some kind of business person, even being a parent. And so in defense, they will often say, well, my friends say I communicate great. You can ask my children. They will even say that I'm flexible or whatever. The intimate relationship is very different than our political pursuits, our business pursuits, our spiritual dynamism. This is a different type of emotionally deep, penetrating, impactful communication. And so you have to develop a skill, not just alliterative words, not just speaking cadence, but an understanding, because the thing that measures whether we have good communication or not is our ability to create understanding. This is how we measure it, not by if I said it with raw passion or if I was brutally or beautifully honest. It's, does the person understand? And the way we can measure if a person understands is by what we do together or what we agree not to do. And so in Akoma Soul, self and others understanding love, our premier relationship skills building program, we are going to show you how to build the skill of intimate communication, which is different than all others, in 3 minutes or less. And so we can stop talking so much, because we oftentimes use our relationships as an intimate vocabulary trash can. We say all the stuff that we can't say anywhere else, that nobody else cares about. Most of the stuff that we don't even want to say to ourselves, we will say in a heartbeat to our partner. And so we want your communication to be effective, efficient, and eloquent. Come to Akoma Soul, get out of walking out of eggshells, and let us help you master the art and science of sacred, intimate communication. Book a strategy call, and we're looking forward to communicating with you. Until that time, as always,
Nia Akoma.